All right, so first of all, in order to make sourdough, we're going to start with a starter, and I'll put a link in the description for a great video from Josh Wiseman on how to do that. And then our next step here will be creating the Levain, which is taking a portion of your starter, mixing it with flour and water. So essentially you're making another starter so that you don't use up all your sourdough starter that you already have. And in this recipe, we're going to do 45 grams of starter, and we'll mix that with 90 grams of flour, combination of wheat, whole wheat, and bread, and 90 grams of water. I would suggest using organic, and make sure your flour is not bleached. We're looking for unbleached, and we're looking for whole wheat. Stone ground is great. Now we're adding some whole wheat. Using the scale, of course. Grams is the only way to do this correctly. And then we're going to use 90 grams of water at 95 degrees, or 85 degrees. Yeah, let's do 90 grams of water at 85 degrees. That sounds reasonable. Give it a good mix until everything's stirred up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cover this, and we're going to mark the level of the Levain in the jar. You can put a piece of tape on it, or you can mark it with a Sharpie. Mark it in some fashion. And then you're going to put it in an area that is dark, away from sunlight, and possibly in the warm. Okay, we're going to get that in an area that is 80 degrees, 78 degrees, somewhere in there. You can either put it in a dark cabinet if your house is warm, or you can put it in your oven and just turn the light on in the oven. And that's where I keep mine. I know I originally put it in the cupboard there, but you're going to see that I'm going to keep it there. Next, we're going to Autolyse our dough, which is essentially flour and water. And this recipe, I'll put all of the measurements in there, but we're looking at 948 grams of flour, 660 grams of water that is between 90 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're just going to mix that all together until it's a shaggy dough. I usually use a spoon until I can't mix any more than I use my hands. Josh Wiseman would tell you to use your hands from the beginning. You're going to mix that all together, and then you're going to cover this with a damp towel and let it sit in the same area that you have your Levain rising. That way they're both the same temperature. And you're going to let this Autolyse for 45 minutes. And I would start this process an hour before your Levain is ready. The Levain will take 4 to 5 hours depending on the temperature. So usually at about hour 4 is a good time to start Autolysing your dough. And once it has sat in the same area for 45 minutes, then at that point you're going to add your Levain, which I did not capture. I actually didn't get the footage. Thought we didn't. But you're going to pour your Levain out once it has doubled in size, usually about 45 minutes, 80 degrees. You're going to spread it all over the top of your dough, and you're going to punch it in with your fingers, make a bunch of dimples, and then you're going to add your salt. So for this recipe, it'll be 18 grams of salt. And then you're just going to keep punching that in and squeezing it until it's very thoroughly combined with your Autolyse dough. So you're looking at flour, water, Levain, and salt, all mixed together. And once that is done, we are going to start the bulk ferment, which is a total of 3 hours. The best thing to do is just keep it in that same area, damp towel covering it in the oven with the light on. Oven turned off, light on. And keep it in there for a total of 3 hours. But when you first put it in, you're going to put a timer on, and after 15 minutes, we're going to do a stretch and fold. So you're going to do a stretch and fold like so. You're going to grab the edges, pull it out as far as you can without breaking, fold it all the way over, and you're going to rotate, and you're going to do this all the way around. All the way around. You're going to do this 3 times. You're going to do it right now, then you're going to put it back in. You're going to do a timer for 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes, you'll do it again. And then you're going to do it at 30 minutes from that time. And then after that, you're going to let it bulk ferment for the rest of the remaining time, which is an additional 2 hours.
I've got this old letter, I'll read it every night. Every night. Every night. Every night.
And then when it's done, you're going to gently scoop it out of the bowl onto a non-floured work surface. Try not to smash it. Don't push any of the air bubbles out. Whatever's in there you want to keep in there as far as air bubbles go. And we're going to separate this into 2 loaves. Use a bench scraper or sharp knife, something along those lines. I flour it, makes it a lot easier. So we're going to flour the top. That way it doesn't stick to our bench scraper. Make you a little score line where you think the middle is. And then pinch that off. What? And then we're just going to separate these 2 pieces of bread. Okay. Now using your bench scraper, we're going to scoop under, pulling towards yourself. And what you're doing is just, what we're doing is pre-shaping the loaves. So using your bench scraper, you're pulling the dough towards yourself to create a tight surface tension. So when the surface looks taut, like a tightly round ball, then we'll be good to go. And then we're going to cover these with glass bowls. We're going to cover these with glass bowls to keep the air away from them, and we're going to keep them covered for 15 minutes. Right there on the work surface, and then we'll take the bowls off and we'll let them sit in open air for about 10 minutes before we shape our loaves. Once that 10 minutes has passed, we're going to use our bench scraper to flip them upside down and kind of get them into a long rectangle gently. Don't push out any of the air bubbles. And we're going to fold each side over each other. And then we're going to fold from the far end towards yourself and then just roll back. Now you're going to use your pinkies as you roll against the bench towards yourself to create a tight ball without pressing out any of the air that we have in there. And once it is tight and you are satisfied with your tight ball of dough, you're going to flip this over upside down with the seam up, and that's how you're going to drop it into your banneton or your proofing basket. And then the proofing baskets you're going to want to seal as airtight as you can. So I'm using grocery bags. I'm sure there's much better ways to do this. And I'm just going to tie those as tightly as I can. Keep them airtight. And we're going to put those in the fridge for 14 to 15 hours to proof. So it's good to do this at night and go to sleep. Next morning you can wake up and make your sourdough. So you'll know it's done when you put your finger in the dough, you touch it, and it springs back, but not completely. So it's going to come back real quick, but it's not going to come back completely. That means it's ready to go. So your Dutch oven will have been in the oven. Your Dutch oven will have been in the oven for an hour at this point, preheating at 500 degrees. And then you're going to pull it out, and you're going to put a sheet of parchment paper in you're going to take a piece of parchment paper and you're going to put it on top of your proofing basket and flip your proofing basket upside down. And you'll use a sharp knife or a razor to score your bread however you want to score it. Drop it into your Dutch oven carefully so you don't burn yourself, like I almost did. Put your lid on, put it back in the oven for 20 minutes at 500 with the lid on. At this point, you're going to remove the lid and turn the heat to 475 for 25 to 30 minutes or until it looks nice and dark and crispy. Then you'll know it's ready. You can pull it out, put it on a wire rack for 20 to 30 minutes. Do not cut into your bread immediately, as tempting as it may be. Put it on a wire rack for 20 to 30 minutes, and after that point, you can cut and you can serve. So you can see I did a couple different scoring techniques here. I'm just kind of messing around with it. There's no wrong way here. You don't have to score it at all. It's more of an artistic thing.